Good afternoon, this is Father Rayappa. I'm going to read something for you from the encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Francis's encyclical on ecology and environment. I'm going to read something from the first chapter, which is titled as What is Happening to Our Common Home? What is happening to our planet Earth, in other words? So Pope is discussing a lot of different variety of elements and he is suggesting that we don't have a framework, a strong moral framework or a economic framework to strike out the present exploitation of the natural world. We don't have a sound ethics, no bioethics, no moral code. There is no even religious or a political rationale which can stand up to this kind of plunder and exploitation. So Pope expresses anguish. Actually, in the first chapter, in the subtopic, it is the sixth subtopic, which is titled Weak Responses. So, in other words, we don't have a framework to rectify or to undo the damage we have done to the environment and the ecology. So, he's writing in the paragraph number 54 as follows. It is remarkable how weak international politics have been. The failure of global summits on the environment make it plain that our politics are subject to technology and finance. There are too many special interests and economic interests easily end up trumping the common good and manipulating information so that their own plans will not be affected. The Aparecida Document urges that the interest of economic groups which irrationally demolish sources of life should not prevail in dealing with natural resources. The alliance between the economy and technology ends up sidelining anything unrelated to its immediate interest. Consequently, the most one can expect is superficial rhetoric, sporadic acts of philanthropy, and perfunctory expressions of concern for the environment, whereas any genuine attempt by groups within society to introduce change is viewed as a nuisance based on romantic illusions or an obstacle to be circumvented. Very, very interesting writing from Pope Francis. He starts off in the paragraph 54 criticizing the responses, the international responses to the ecological crisis. Technology is too powerful, and the economy powerful, and politics too powerful. In front of these three, the poor, they don't have any chance. The poor are vulnerable in front of these three. And there is no justice. Justice fails. Solidarity absolutely fails. And care for creation, care for the environment, absolutely, they don't have a place here. Because international politics is so strong and they have special interest. Their interest is only on economical growth, high economic growth, markets, production, consumption. This is what is going on. And Pope is expressing sadness over the past 20 years of international summits, United Nations summits on global warming and climate change, their protocols, uh, uh, for example, like Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, 1992. I mean, they have created a beautiful document in the Rio summit, but the enforcement, the application of that resolutions is sluggish. It's not happening. It's happening. The summit itself was good. They talked about sustainable development. They talked about biological diversities conservation. They talked about ozone layer. They talked about extinction of species, the issue of water. So many things have been discussed in the Rio de Janeiro summit in 1992. And the sustainable development, that is the magic word, which means that the present generations usage of natural resources should not impede the next generation's ability to use them, isn't it? So present generation can use the natural resources. At the same time, the generations after us, they should also have enough resources to live comfortably. So let us use them, not abuse them, in other words. So and then came other summits like 1997, Kyoto, which was a fairly success because there were 172 countries joined there, and the outcome was remarkable. And from 1997, there was talk of mitigating the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the carbon credits, so on. And actually it was pretty good. The 97 summit was very practical and very effective. The protocol, the Kyoto Protocol, was enforced in honesty, and it has yielded some good results. Then came, you know very well, 2009, Copenhagen, but it was utter failure, good for nothing. So the Copenhagen, Denmark summit was absolutely useless, absolutely didn't bring any outcome, good outcome at all. What they did was only pollute more. They stayed in 5-star hotels, they used enormous amount of water, they printed on thousands and thousands of pages of paper, and they used electricity, and they emitted carbon, and then most of the leaders came in their own planes, and then they polluted the atmosphere, and they returned to their respective countries without any consensus. There is no global consensus. It was utter failure. The whole humanity failed to respond to the ecological crisis. That is what happened in Copenhagen, Denmark in 2009. And then came Durban, 2011, and Durban somewhat better, and their conclusion, one of the resolutions what they have taken was that towards the end of this century, and we should limit 2 degrees Celsius mark, that is the threshold, because IPCC, International panel on climate change, has predicted that there will be 4 degrees Celsius hike in the present temperatures by the turn of the century, and the world leaders and the United Nations, uh, they were very much concerned about it, and then they discussed about it, and the world leaders agreed to limit to the maximum of 2 degrees Celsius. Other 2 degrees you can't control anyway. So that is what is happening that's what's happened in 2011, Durban, South Africa, and all those principles are in effect in international politics right now, and the positive things are coming up. I should give credit to United Nations and so on. And then came Paris last year, 2015. It's a pretty good summit, and the international politics, they have consciousness, and they want to follow some ethical guidelines and ethical principles, moral law, the values, and I think that's a main factor which gives energy, which gives motivation to humans to act. I think so far we lost our consciousness. Once there are no values, there is no moral law, there is no ethics, I think we become empty inside, and we are an empty gong, and all our actions, they are not bridled. All our actions are not controlled because you don't have values and ethics and moral law. So I think the Paris summit really has come back to that basic principle of human consciousness. So I think when you base your actions on this paradigm, I think creation will have chance, and our future can sustain by itself. And it's a beautiful, beautiful summit. I think it was kind of a success. You know why? Just before the summit, Pope Francis has launched the encyclical Laudato Si just 5 months before, and actually many people read it. 7 billion people have read this, especially United Nations. They are well aware of this document, and also United Nations knows very well that Pope is not very much pleased with the United Nations because their actions are ineffective, and also there is no framework to enforce the laws framed by these conventions, isn't it? So there are so many laws and so many guidelines and framework they enforce during this international summits, but to enforce them, there is no infrastructure. Then how are we going to find results? How are we going to solve the problems? So Pope is appealing for international enforcement, and some team or some institution should monitor what's going on. And Pope Francis is telling that also people manipulate the information. They know something, but they report some other thing. For example, you know very well the greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. It's a very, very powerful greenhouse gas which traps the energy from the sun, the heat energy, the thermal energy, and again it reflects on our planet. I mean, the greenhouse effect is being pumped up each and every day, and it's becoming stronger and stronger. And now we are in the runaway greenhouse effect. No more greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect means quite normal, but now it is known as the runaway greenhouse effect because there is too much of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And actually, mostly the fossil fuel companies, and they propagate a different theory. You know what? Too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is good, they say. It can be very, very conducive for agriculture, they say. And when there is too much carbon dioxide, in the atmosphere, plants can grow very strong and they can produce lot of food. Agricultural productivity will be strong and we can solve the hunger problem around the world. And there is lot of green color is going to be around the planet. So all this is a propaganda of the fossil companies. You see, they know that carbon dioxide is not a benign gas, it's poison. But yet, with all this scientific evidence, these people can block, these people can hide all that information, and they manufacture entirely a different kind of theory and distract people around the world. And there is no consensus. And people spend millions of dollars for this international summits on global warming and climate change. And people, those who have money, people like multinational corporations, fossil fuel companies, they simply trump it all, and simply they say all those research is a big lie and ours is the truth, and people are divided on that. Consequently, we can't take a strong action to solve the global warming and climate change problem. So that's what Pope is writing. So in this paragraph 54, he talks about Aparecida Document. What is Aparecida Document? It is nothing but a document prepared by Latin American and Caribbean bishops. That is a document prepared on ecology and environment. Aparecida Document. In that document, the bishops of South America and the Caribbean nations, they talk about how these multinational corporations irrationally, they swindle, they exploit the poor people's resources. In South America, it's a big problem. For example, Amazon rainforest, even the people, those who live in those jungles, they are evacuated. And the multinational corporations, they go and deforest and they take their land and they cultivate they introduce first of all invasive crops, and then they put fertilizers, and then comes herbicide, then comes GM crops, and slowly the land becomes a desert. So Pope is quoting in this paragraph number 54. So anyway, if you have chance, please read article or paragraph number 54 from Laudato Si, Pope Francis's encyclical on ecology and environment. And we need to put pressure on local politicians, and we need to lobby, and we need to put into practice all those decisions, regulations recommended by the international agreements, and our local government should enforce it and supervise it and monitor whether everything is implemented correctly, and punish the people, those who continue to plunder and exploit the natural resources. And thank you, and God bless.